So today I spoke with Michael Moynagh and we spoke about sustainability, which is one of the biggest challenges for the Dutch pioneering spots. And I'm sitting here with him and I'd like to make him some questions about it. So before we start talking about your enthusiasm of the low budget church, how does a low budget church look like?
Well, the thing about a low budget church is that it's very, very simple. And it's the sort of thing you can do in your spare time. So I'm thinking of my friend Tim, and he met with a group of young adult Christians who were a bit disenchanted with the existing church, had stopped going to church, but one of them loved canoeing. And so they advertised in the social media and in other ways locally, any families enjoy canoeing, come meet us at such a venue and we'll go canoeing together, we'll pay for the canoes. So the group paid for the free canoes, the families gathered, they all went canoeing together, and then they would come back and perhaps they'd have a picnic together, and someone, because it was all age, might just tell a little Bible story aimed at the children, and perhaps even ask the children to make something. If it was about Jesus walking on the water, they might just make a little paper boats, have activities like that. So the families got to know each other, enjoyed canoeing together, and then after a while, Tim said, you know, if you like these stories, I'm going to be at home on Tuesday evenings at 6 o'clock, food and story. Come, we'll eat together and we'll look at some more of these stories. And so some of the families came, a small group of them met, they did the Discovery Bible study, and people began to make a journey towards Jesus in that sort of context. So this is very simple. Tim was doing it in his spare time. It was built around the interests of the group. They weren't working out and having to work hard and do something that they weren't really interested in. They weren't doing evangelism in a way that felt odd and strange. All they were doing was adding something to what they already enjoyed. They enjoyed canoeing. Well, let's add to this by inviting other people to join us and having some more fun. So this is simple church, and it's low budget because it didn't cost them anything except the cost of the canoes.
So all expenses that are made, like the boats, like the food necessary, they're all made by Tim?
Or by the group as a whole, yeah. So it's not hugely expensive, and they might think of it as part of their Christian giving anyway.
So why are you enthusiastic about the low budget church?
The brilliant thing about this model is anyone can do it. You simply find a friend in a walk of your life. You pray together that God will show you simple ways to love the people around you. You deepen your relationships as you do so. As opportunities arise and people want to explore a fuller life, you share the gospel with them. And as they become Christians or walk a journey towards Jesus, you then give them opportunities to learn how to worship where they are, connect to the wider church, and then do it again. Anyone can do this. So the brilliant thing about this is it's not restricted to sort of professional people who need years of training. Ordinary Christians in their everyday life can do this. And from the denomination's point of view, it's fantastic because they don't have to pay someone a salary to do this. Christians are doing this as part of their discipleship. So from a denomination's point of view, they can see the multiplication of Christian communities, but they're not having to pay someone to lead each of these communities. It's happening as organically in the everyday life of ordinary Christian disciples.
And how does sustainability look like?
Well, sustainability looks like multiplication or reproduction. So you can think of it as a bit like a potato that multiplies and grows lots of other potatoes round about it. And that's, I think, a really healthy model of sustainability. So often we think of sustainability as the durability of an existing congregation. But durability does not equal fruitfulness. I can think of lots of congregations in England that have been there for hundreds of years, but they're not very fruitful from all that we can see. But what really matters isn't longevity. What really matters is fruit. And so in this model, what you're really thinking about is how can a new Christian community be fruitful? And one of the ways it can be fruitful is to sprout or give rise to other little Christian communities, and people do this in their everyday lives. So sustainability gets redefined. Instead of saying, oh, this same community must go on forever and ever and ever, you say, no, this community can live in its offspring. So it's like a potato that dies, but there are lots of other potatoes that have sprouted from it. And we see this with the Jerusalem church. In the original Christian community in Jerusalem, it probably didn't last for more than 30 or 40 years. It is a tiny fraction of time in terms of whole church history. But it was very, very fruitful. Lots of new Christian communities emerged. And the Jerusalem community still lives on, if you like, in the offspring that are spread all around the world and are too numerous to count. So we need to think about sustainability much more in terms of reproduction, of organic multiplication.
So it's more about sustaining a movement than sustaining one spot.
Yeah, and that's more exciting, isn't it? You know, well, I can sustain a spot, but wow, see, I don't give rise to a spot, but I give rise to a movement. Whoa, isn't that more exciting for a pioneer or a leader of a new Christian community? And it also takes away the burden, I've got to keep this going, I've got to keep this going. It may be God calls that community to have a limited life. Perhaps it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, perhaps that's the length of its life. But during that time, 1 or 2 people came to birth, as Christians came to new birth, new life. They've begun to start new Christian communities, and that community comes to the end of its natural life, but it continues to live in the new communities that some of the new Christians are beginning to found.
So when you talk about potatoes, it also means that the first potato that you put in the ground, it will die. You will not harvest that one again, but you harvest maybe another 20 or 30. So is that what you are saying, that maybe the first fresh expression dies?
Yeah, and I think this is a lesson that we have still to learn in the UK. Most of our leaders are still wanting to maintain that potato in the fridge. And what they haven't really understood is it's okay for that potato to die if it's giving rise to a whole lot of new potatoes. That's fantastic. And of course, this is the heart of our faith. Jesus dies in order to bring new life to millions and millions and millions of people all through history. So it's that pattern that we want to reproduce in the life of the church.
But what about all those people involved in let's say, the first potato? Maybe a paid pioneer, maybe a group of volunteers. The potato dies, what happens to them?
Well, in terms of the paid pioneer, I think we need to sort of rethink the role of a pioneer. I'd increasingly want to say that maybe a pioneer is a facilitator of lay people to start new Christian communities. So we want to encourage pioneers not just to start a community yourself, but why don't you encourage other people to start communities in very simple ways in their everyday life. And you as a pioneer, you're the connector. You connect these communities to the local church and to the wider church. You support, you're a connector, you're a supporter, you encourage and support the pioneers. You're a facilitator, you help it to happen. Maybe you add to what they're doing. It may be that some of the people coming to new Christian life, it may be that they could do with a little bit of instruction in the Christian faith that the lay leader hasn't got time to do. And so you put on a 3-week evening class to instruct them in certain aspects of the Christian faith that they want to know more about. So you can support and encourage and augment what the lay people are doing. And I think this connecting role and supporting role for pioneers is really important, and we need them, but it's different to the pioneer investing all their time in starting one community. We want pioneers, I think, who are investing themselves in several lay people. They're starting several new Christian communities that then go on and multiply.
Is it hard to find volunteers or lay pioneers, lay people, because they're not paid by the things they do? They do it in their free time?
It depends, of course, what you mean by hard. If you said to me, you've got 100 Christians in front of you, how many would do this? My guess might be 1 or 2. But that's 1 or 2 more than were doing it before. And if you multiply that out by thousands, it becomes a significant number. But they'll do it because they're excited by this. Many people are treading very ordinary lives. At certain points of their lives, new families, new jobs, oh, I'm too busy, can't do this. But later on, the family leaves home. Later on, you plateau in your career. And, it's all getting a bit routine and ordinary. Here's a way of adding something extra to what you're doing. I enjoy my job, but I can add to it. I can take in free croissants and give them away on Monday morning with someone, and we can enrich people's lives there. I enjoy cycling. I've been cycling with this group of friends for several months. Actually, my partner can work with some of the others. She doesn't enjoy cycling, but she can organise some food so that when we come back from our cycling, we now have a meal together. Wow, cycling is more fun now. We're not only cycling, but we're spending more time chatting together. We don't have to organise the food because that's being done by a group of people for us, with us, and we can have more fun together. So here's a way of adding something extra to your ordinary life. And this, I think, is what Christianity is about. Christianity is not about subtracting stuff, putting us under great pressure to do things we don't want to do, making life a bit of a misery. Jesus said, I've come that people might have fullness of life. So what does a fullness of life mean? Well, it doesn't mean just going on doing what you're doing every day in the workplace and being bored. Here is something that you can add to a fuller life, not only for you, but for the people around you. Fullness of life is not just going on jogging every morning, with a group of friends once a week. We jog perhaps with the same group of friends. Why don't we add something to our lives by having breakfast together and building community together? So you're bringing fullness of life to people. And I think when our lay people see this happening, understand how easy it is for them to do, then the one or two people I've described will become 3s and 4s and 5s, and the folks coming to faith in their new Christian communities, you teach them to do the same. What does it mean to be a Christian? Well, one of the things it might mean is to be a follower of Jesus in a 21st century way. Find a friend in a walk of your life. Pray that God shows you simple ways to love the people around you. This is exciting. Build and deepen your relationships with them. Share the Christian faith with them as opportunities arise, if that's appropriate. And then, if people want to walk a journey to the Christian faith, help them to worship Jesus where they are, connect with the wider church, and then to do it again. And that's a great form of fruitfulness, because at the heart of it is loving people. So what you're saying is, when you become a Christian, don't try and do it on your own. Love people, because love is always, or mostly, organised. If you think of a family, when you love people in a family, it's nearly always organised. You've got to feed the children, you've got to get them to school, you're going to organise a holiday, organise a family treat, organise a birthday. These expressions of love are organised. And you can organise things on your own, but you ask a single parent, and so many single parents do a brilliant job, but I think most of them would say it would have been great to have had a partner to help us. And so the brilliant thing about these new Christian communities is that they give you an opportunity not to be a Christian on your own and love people on your own. It's hard to follow Jesus on your own. It's much easier when you get together with other Christians. And so you get together with other Christians, you love people practically where you are, build your relationships and deepen your relationships with them. And then you share the gospel in that context and then help them to become a Christian community in that context. And this is integrated discipleship. All aspects of the kingdom are there. You're listening to people and listening to God. You're loving people. You're building community with them. You're sharing the gospel. You're encouraging something in the form of church to emerge. You're doing it again, which witnesses to the expansive nature of the kingdom. This is full-blooded kingdom discipleship. So when folks come to faith in a Christian community and you say, well, what's the fruit like? This is one of the ways of showing fruitfulness. And so for me, it seems to me almost an inevitable outpouring of the gospel. And we haven't often thought of it like this. But I think if we think of what it means to make disciples, and we think of discipleship in terms of this fruitfulness, that makes so much sense here in the 21st century. And so you're killing two birds with one stone. You're helping new Christians become fruitful disciples, you're also helping your community to continue in the life of these new communities. And if your community comes to a natural end, well, that's fine, because its life continues in the offspring.
So low budget church, is that the main way of sustaining fresh expressions?
I think in the 21st century it is one of the main ways of sustaining fresh expressions, because quite a lot of our new Christian communities, they are quite fragile. They depend on particular circumstances, often particular people. The folks move on, people's lives are more fluid nowadays than they were in the past. So folks may leave, get sick, change jobs, all sorts of reasons. And so we can't be sure that these communities are going to last forever. If it's groups of people who are young adults or youth, then they may well move and go to college or university or whatever. So you can't be sure that that community is going to continue. So if you invest all your energies in just making that one community sustainable, you may well be disappointed. But if you invest your energies in, through the Spirit, breeding disciples who will then go out and make new communities themselves, then you've got sustainability built into the fruitfulness and reproduction of your community. And as I want to keep saying, sustainability, your community lives in the life of its offspring. So it's sustainable in a different way. It's not sustainable because the same community continues. It's sustainable in the sense that, like a potato, the original potato dies, but it goes on living in the new potatoes that it's given birth to. And likewise, the original community goes on living in the new communities that emerge through the people who've become Christians in that community.